Good morning and welcome to the commission meeting for March 17th. Yes, it is St. Patrick's Day. We can all claim to be a little bit Irish today, so happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm calling our meeting to order. And note for the record that we do have a quorum of commissioners present. Before we get started, if you're going to be speaking today, we are required to have your name for public record, so please sign in the back of the room. And if you have a cell phone, to avoid embarrassment, silence your phone. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Look for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Next is our consent agenda. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment on an item on our consent agenda, now is your opportunity. Consent agenda is where we authorize the bills to be paid, personnel actions, routine abatements, etc. Everything's available for public record down in the auditor's office. Commissioners, anybody want to poll or comment on any item on the consent agenda?
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to our regular business. Our first item is a briefing on potential refinancing of the 2017A Certificates of Participation. Susan Beeman, Finance and Budget Officer. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Susan Beeman with the Auditor's Office. We wanted to brief you today on just a possible refinance of our 2017 certificates of participation, which were for the jail expansion project. The interest rates have dropped, that it indicates that if we were to do a refinance over the remaining portion of the repayment schedule of those of that debt, that we could save a little over $500,000 if we pursued that refinancing. So we wanted to just bring this forward for your consideration and to see if there is an interest to pursue it. If there is, we will need to take formal action with a resolution at a later meeting. We do have Tom Grimmon with Collier Security here as well that could answer questions if you have any. So we just wanted to just bring it forward and see if you have any interest in pursuing this or not.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Before we bring Tom up, or if we have questions for Tom, I'm going to open it to public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment on this agenda item? All right, commissioners, I'll turn it over to you for discussion. We are not taking action on this agenda item other than to maybe just give some guidance to the finance and budget officer on what we'd like to do. Commissioner Benega.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of doing that. I think it's a good idea for us to reconsider that particular item. And frankly, it would be a good investment, so to speak, and not having to have a longer commitment.
Commissioner Heisey.
I would just second those comments by Commissioner Benega. I think if we can get a lower interest rate and save taxpayers close to $500,000, that's the right course of action. I do have one quick question. Susan, how soon can we pursue this?
We can pursue it at any time. It is 6 to 8 weeks roughly to get all the work to accomplish it. Because there's work with bond counsel, rating agencies, et cetera. So there is some work that needs to be done, state's attorney's involvement, things like that. So it'd be 6 to 8 weeks before we'd actually have it done.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one question. looks in our briefing packet that the bond yield would change from 3.22% to 2.78%, which is significant, but I guess there's also refinancing costs and things, but just kind of confirming we do come out ahead even after refinancing costs and just the transaction costs?
Yes, so the $57,000 per year or $562,000 over the course of the last 12 years are net of costs. I don't know if Tom has anything else to add, but that is our net savings after
Okay.
costs.
Yep, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Blindberg.
Thank you. Are there any pros or cons that are significant that we should consider other than the cost savings?
One thing we discussed is now the right time, or do you wait to see if rates drop? In our discussions with Tom, essentially it's you can wait a year, but then you've also lost 1 year of savings, so it essentially balances out. So we didn't see any downside in waiting, other than obviously a little bit extra work in the next couple of months to accomplish the refinance. Maybe if Tom has anything else to add. Sure.
Hi, Tom Gurman from Collier Securities, used to be Doherty and Company. For anyone who's been here longer than me, I was looking around the room, sorry to add to your meeting, but Gerald's here. I think he's got me by a few years, and I did see the sheriff come in. I think he might have me by a few years, but outside of that, I think I got all the rest of you. I'm just feeling old today. So anyway, downside, not really. As Susan said, the bonds are callable, and I don't know if that was mentioned. So we reached the call date on the bonds on December 1 of 2025. So once you reach the call date, as I always tell commissions, school districts, school boards, municipalities, city councils, is that once you reach the call date, you're really, and you're in the savings range where you think you want to have some savings or where you have savings, you're really just gambling on where interest rates are going. Now, if someone has some insight on where interest rates are going, please let me know. I don't even, or I would have bought the house 30 years ago and I'd be retired by now. But right now, interest rates are very good. Even though they're higher than they were, we still have some sticker shock for a lot of folks because interest rates are way higher than they were. We were financing school buildings, 4 years ago at 2%, under 2%. I still remember we did Castlewood for 1.85% for 20 years. It was crazy. We were giving money away. There's still a bit of a sticker shock there because now we're back to where maybe rates would be normally. We've slid down what I call the yield curve far enough on this issue because it was done in 17. So 8 years have gone by, more or less, almost 9 years have gone by. And so now we've come down the yield curve a little bit, and where the interest rates are at on the remaining piece of this is lower than the interest rates we can get, which we've already covered. So that's where that change happens from the 3.22 down to the 2.78. So that's really it. I don't know if I answered your question. That was the long answer to the question. The caveat is if you think interest rates are going to go lower, you want to wait. I still, as we talked about at our meeting about this when we first presented it to the county, was that, let's at least get it in motion. Rates are up a little bit since the war happened. They've been trending down. We're hoping that they'll come back to where they were at before. The 10-year Treasury, which is kind of our benchmark, has gone back up to over 4%. It was down around 3.96%. And that's actually a really good rate for a 10-year Treasury. So anyway, I just throw that out there.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Commission, unless somebody has objections to guiding, moving forward, I think that's the direction we want to go. Commissioner Blindberg?
Thank you. Just one more follow-up question based on that information. You said it's going to be a little extra work for you or for your office. Is there a timing, with it being an election year, that you would prefer that we wait, or should we just get started right away?
I think our preference is really no good time. Obviously, election years are always busy, or busier than maybe normal. But I think it's just, there's enough of us working on it as far as bond counsel, state's attorney's office will be involved, our office will be involved, Colliers, et cetera. And I think we can accommodate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. 10 years ago, or in 2017, 3.22 was a good interest rate, and 2.78 seems pretty good to me right now, too. So I don't think we have any objection to moving the process forward, so
Okay.
I'd say.
So we
Onward,
will
upward.
begin the work with our various partners, and then within the next 2 to 3 weeks, you probably will see an additional commission action to approve the resolution that is necessary to actually move it forward.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Susan. Moving on then, public hearing to consider a budget carryover and other budget supplements. Susan?
Yeah, Susan Beeman with the Auditor's Office. So this is an annual process that we follow and complete to bring forward to you considerations for carryovers from the 25 budget into the 26 budget, as well as supplements that maybe were things that needed to be considered after the 26 budget was finalized in September of last year. So before you, the request is for the general fund, a supplement of $842,088.32, and various special revenue funds of $21,930,902.87. The majority of these items are items that were contracted or projects planned in 25 that are going to be completed in 26, or in addition, unspent grant funds or donations that need to be carried forward into the 26 budget year for those intended purposes. In a handful of cases, there are supplement requests for unanticipated costs that the departments would like to have considered for your consideration. The majority of the special revenue fund carryovers are the capital projects fund, which is the Juvenile Justice Center project. You have an extensive list of those in your packet. I can certainly go through every one if you would like me to, or I could just pause for your questions.
Okay. Questions at this time? So this is a public hearing. Did you have more you wanted to add before we open it for proponents?
I can go into detail on all of them if you would like me to, or we can wait for public comment.
Let's do the public comment, and then we'll see what questions the commission may have. So it is a public hearing, so we look for proponents, anybody that is okay with moving this item forward. Now's your time to talk. Any opponents to this budget carryover and budget supplements? All right, so commission, do you have questions, or would you like to go over any specific items in the proposed supplements? This is an annual thing, as Susan has said, with carryovers and so forth, so. Commissioner Bleinberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the exception of the capital funds, is this pretty standard from previous years?
This is pretty standard from previous years. Our general fund supplement carryover requests and supplement and carryover requests is down about not quite 600,000 from the prior year. So last year the request was 1.4 million. We're down to 842,000 this year. And then the special revenue funds, the majority of that decrease from last year to this year is Juvenile Justice Center, and the fact that we're continuing to spend down that budget for that project. So in general, it's a little better than last year, but generally in line.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll just make a general comment of thanking our department heads for prudent management of their budgets throughout the year, that a lot of these supplement requests and carryovers are pretty de minimis and standard to prior years. So I just want to give them a shout out for their management of the budgets throughout the year. So I had no questions or concerns.
Look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Gipley,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Bleinberg,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on with the Susan Beeman Show, a briefing of unaudited 2025 financial results and publications.
Yes, Susan Beeman with the Auditor's Office again. We'll just go through a handful of reports and numbers. And at any point, if you have questions or want to dive deeper into any of them, please let me know. So the first thing that we'll go through, I'm going to skip through the briefing memo and just go to the PowerPoint. So we're going to cover the annual report that we are required to publish by codified law, as well as more of a detailed briefing on our operating results for our major funds. for general fund, highway, building, the ARPA fund, the capital projects fund, and bond redemption. We do have information in the packet for the 13 non-major funds. I don't plan to brief those in detail just because of the volume of those, as well as just a general statement of cash flows. So the first report that you have in this packet is the report that's required by codified law. So we are required to publish this in the newspaper by March 30th, and we also do publish it as an unaudited annual report on our website. So key indicators for this report is our total revenue across the county is just over $132.6 million, with our expenditures across all funds of $144.2 million. That might seem a little odd that we have that deficit between the revenue and the expenses, but the majority of that detail, or that difference, is our capital projects fund, which is the spend down of the Juvenile Justice Center bond. And then our bond, our long-term outstanding debt is $92.9 million. Of that $92 million, just over $92 million are actual certificates of participation debt. The remaining amount is a combination of leases that are payable, as well as our arbitrage payable on that Juvenile Justice Center bond. So this is the actual report. I am not going to go into detail on this. The numbers are small, and there are a lot of them. So like I said, this will be published in the paper as well as on our website. So I'll just pause on this one if there's any questions.
Susan, just a quick question, which usually just summarizes all those papers, is the fact that we get a clean audit from the auditor.
Correct. Historically, we've had a clean audit from the auditors. This is that first step. We've submitted a number of the required schedules to Department of Legislative Audit that were due by the end of February. This is the next phase, and then they will be here to audit us, honestly, any time now. They're will probably be here within the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as we get into the actual fund, this is where we'll dive into the details a little bit. I am going to skip ahead to this schedule here because we'll talk through the narrative here. Jake, I don't know if we can make that a little bit bigger. Thank you. So our revenue for the county for the general fund, and as we've talked, that the general fund is our fund that has the majority of county operations in it. We had an $86 million budget for revenue. Our revenue came in just over $89 million, so about $3 million favorable from where we budgeted. So when we dive into those differences, there are really two primary differences that make up that difference. That is interest income as well as bank franchise. Those two together equate to about $3.8 million of that $3 million. So I highlight that just because we have no control over either of those numbers. And so we've had interest rates have dropped from prior year already, and we know that interest rates very likely will drop in the future. How quickly, nobody knows. But I can tell you that our interest income in our general fund is about $800,000 lower than it was last year. So that does correlate to those drops in interest rates. So, and then with bank franchise is just a number that continues to be very variable. We were about $1.5 million over budget this year in how much we received. But the number we had 2 years ago, if the number that we received 2 years ago would have come in, we would only have been $400,000 over budget. So there can be swings in that bank franchise from year to year. So we really can't bank on bank franchise being in over budget every year. It's a very variable number that we just really have no idea how things will be. As far as the rest of the revenue in this fund, you can see there's a number of positives and a number of negatives. The one I'll point out that's significantly under budget, where we came in under budget on revenue, is juvenile housing. We were $944,000 under budget on our JDC revenue for housing rent for that facility. And that really is primarily attributed to the fact that we used more days for Minnehaha County kids than other counties or the state. Additionally, you'll see a opioid settlement negative 300,000. That is just simply a change because we had to move that revenue over to the opioid settlement fund. That was a new fund in 2025. One thing that's not listed on here that I just wanted to point out because it didn't meet my thresholds to include on here, we did receive $67,000 of additional revenue in 2025 for that change in law where the cases that originate in the pen, the public defense costs are reimbursed by the state. So we did receive $67,000 as reimbursement from DOC for public defender and public advocate cases. So moving into the expense side, our total expenditures were under budget by about $5.1 million. As we dive into those details, our personnel was just under budget by about 1.9 million. Two primary things are driving that. We had 3 insurance holidays, which equate to about $750,000 of savings. And then we delayed the UC3 expansion, which was just under $600,000 of savings. And then in the other expense area and capital projects area, we were under budget by about $3.2 million. A couple of the ones I want to point out there, you'll see human services, hospitals and other expenses are lower than budgeted. With hospitals, that is primarily attributed to Medicaid expansion. So the one variable with this as we move into 27 budget and beyond, the Medicaid expansion work requirements, we are not sure how this will impact us. Carrie Benz did drop our budget for hospitals in 26, but with those work expansion requirements, we might see that tick back up. So something to continue to watch, that the results of 25 may not be indicative of future years. And additionally, on the other expenses for human services, there were a number of partners in our community that still had federal dollars in 25 for rental and utility assistance. Those programs essentially ended in September of 25. So as we move into 26, you'll see probably more people coming to the county for rental and utility assistance since those federal program dollars are not as available as they were last year.
Somebody's going to have to explain to me how the work requirement on Medicaid can cause our expenses to go up.
And that's something that we're continuing to watch with Carrie Benz, and that would be a great question for Carrie. And we just don't know. As if more people are not eligible for Medicaid and they have hospital stays, there's a concern that those expenses might go back up.
Okay.
And it's something that we're continuing to watch, and we just don't know how it's going to play out.
Speculation.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm going to just pause there on the general fund. I went through that fairly quickly. If there's anything else you would like to detail on the general fund, since it is the primary fund. The other thing I'll maybe note of our savings on expenses of 5.1 million, 842,000 was the carryover that you approved. So that savings up here on the expenses with 5.6%. We usually budget 3% underspend of expenses as part of our budget. So when we bring the carryovers factored into that, we're about 4.7%. So we definitely met that 3% of underspend of budget, and we were a little bit ahead of that. So we're on target with what we indicated in our budget preparations. Okay. For the highway fund is operating in a fairly consistent manner with prior years. Revenues were about $1.2 million over budget. Again, the majority or a fair portion of that is interest income, was about $550,000 of that. And then the remaining portion is just a combination of wheel tax, motor vehicle money, some grant funds, et cetera. And then with the expenditure section of the budget, about $6.5 million, $6.8 million in savings on underspend of budget, which about 2.5 of that will be carried over into the next budget year. This is not abnormal in the historical approach of how the highway has operated in the past. Okay. As we move into the building fund, again, consistent results with what we've seen in prior years. Revenue is over budget by about 1.6 million. Again, the majority of that is interest income. And the majority of that interest income is on the assigned fund balance that we have in that fund. A number of expenses that are that we were underspent in was about $2.1 million. As part of the carryovers that you approved, 1.3 million of that will be carried into next year for projects into 2026. So in general, building fund is consistent with historical results. And then on ARPA, what you'll see is zeros for variance to budget. The ARPA fund is now completely closed as of the end of the year. We wanted to just report this, showing out the closure of the fund at the end of the year. And then our capital projects fund, again, the revenues are only interest income into that fund. The variance of interest income is just really a difference in a budget of what came in. And then on the capital projects fund, expenditures were about $18.4 million under budget, with the majority of that will be carried into next year. The one thing I'll just note is that $750,000 of arbitrage interest. We still will have to pay that, but it will actually be recorded in either 26 or 27. We received some additional information before we closed the financials for 25 that due to the accounting treatments for the modified accrual for the funds, we can't record that until within 1 year. So that is payable, but we just can't record it in compliance with the accounting standards.
It's payable back to
the IRS. So the Juvenile Justice Center bonds have an arbitrage yield limitation. Mm-hmm. Anything that we exceed that amount, we will have to rebate to the IRS within 5 years of the bond being taken out or the completion of the project.
So
it'll be about $1 million.
So the county received roughly 50 million. We don't spend it all because it's a construction project. We spend it down over time, but we have the money invested. And because the county borrowed the money and we made too much interest, we got to pay a penalty to the IRS.
I don't know if it's considered a penalty. It's considered an arbitrage rebate.
Yeah,
So-
we
so-
did too well. Yeah.
So yes, we
Makes no sense.
the tax exempt bonds have a limit of how much we can make, and then anything over that limit, we have to rebate to the IRS. So right now, we're anticipating that will be in 27, so which is why it's not payable yet, because we're too far out. So that is still payable, but it'll be down the road.
Make more sense to rebate it back to the taxpayers of Minnehaha County, but that's my opinion.
And then the last slide for the major funds that I'll go into detail on is the bond redemption fund. This is the fund that we have debt service for 3 of our projects: the courthouse remodel, the Juvenile Justice Center, and the jail expansion project. So this is operating as normal. The variance to budget on the revenue is predominantly interest income, as well as an under receipting of taxes, which is again normal as well. I'll pause there on the major funds before I move into the next ones if there's any questions.
Mr. Chair, I have one quick question.
Please.
Morning, Susan. I wonder if you can give us this general overview of some of the major outstanding debts held by the county, and perhaps one of those debts are going to be paid off and satisfied down the road.
I don't have exact dates in front of me. The first one that will be paid off will be the courthouse remodeling project or addition. That is roughly $900,000 a year, and that I believe drops off in I believe in 28. And then the next 2 pieces of debt are going to be a while. The next piece of debt is the jail expansion project. That will be 2037. That's roughly $3.5 million a year in debt service. And then in the 2040s, like 41, 42, will be the highway and the equalization building remodelings. Those are in the building fund debt service. And then the last one will be the Juvenile Justice Center that won't be paid off until 2043, 44. And that's also about $3.5 million.
You have a great memory. Thank you.
Don't quote me on all of it, but generally,
It sounded about
ballpark.
right to me.
So as I indicated, we do have all the information in here related to the 13 non-major funds. I won't go into detail on any of these. We did have carryover requests for emergency management and rural access funds. Those are part of this, what you approved today as well. And then in addition, the opioid settlement fund was a new fund that came into place in 25. So I'm going to skip through these reports and not go into detail unless anybody has questions. And then the last report that we wanted to share with you is our cash flow report. And Jake, I'll have you make that a little bit bigger. This has the same major funds that you saw on the other slide. And then I'll just point out that as you go to the bottom, we have about a $12.5 million decrease in cash. What you can see is that's predominantly this column here, the 17.1 million is the capital projects fund. So that's just the spend down of the Juvenile Justice Center escrow for that building project. And then the 1.1 million next to it is the spend down of ARPA. What you can see in these other funds, the 2.2 million is general fund, highway fund. The 2.2 million here is building fund. So those results are very, from a cash flow perspective, are similar to what you saw in the operating results. So I can go into more detail on this if anybody has questions.
Mr. Chair. And so when we talk about our cash reserves, and we've talked a little bit about bonds and our interest rate, we've talked with, we've set a general policy, is it 25% we try to keep in reserves at year end?
Correct.
Okay, and that's come from some guidance we've gotten from bond agencies that we didn't want to drop below 20% or it would potentially affect our bond rating. And when we have future capital projects on the horizon, that's something we want to keep an eye on and stay within that reserve policy generally.
Correct. We do have an official policy where we want to keep 25% in our unassigned fund balance in the general fund. The general fund also has a requirement that we can't be more than 40% as well. So we kind of have to balance that. So we are at that threshold at the end of December of 25. Trying to think what the exact number, it's in that 34% range, but I don't have it exactly. It's in that ballpark. And we have not done anything with the 15.5 million that was assigned for future public safety. That's still in the assigned category for future needs within the general fund.
All done?
I
All right. This is not an action item, but we do take public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment on our unaudited financial results for 2025? All right. Thank you, Susan.
Yep,
Very
thank you.
detailed and very well. Thank you. Moving on, consider a motion to authorize the chair to sign an addendum to the City of Sioux Falls temporary construction easement dated 10/9/25. I have a feeling this has to do with what's going on out front.
Good morning, Commission. Mark Krins, Facilities Department. Yes, back in October 2025, the county approved, a temporary construction easement with the city for the Minnesota Avenue construction project. The current phasing plan has the east half of Minnesota closed. Phase 1 is expected to be completed on or around the end of July. Due to this change, the jail kitchen loading dock will not be accessible for the food truck. The alternative that has been agreed on is to install a temporary access road on the west side of the public safety building so the truck can travel through parking lot A, around the public safety building to the jail kitchen loading dock. And then The truck will exit onto 4th Street. The city of Sioux Falls will install the temporary access, and then when phase 1 is complete, the access to the loading dock off Minnesota is available. The city will remove the gravel access, perform minor grading and mulch, and fertilize the disturbed grass areas. I'm requesting authorization for the chair to sign the addendum to the temporary construction easement with the city of Sioux Falls. Are there any questions?
Okay, public comment on this item. All right, I'll turn it over to the commission for questions or action.
Mark, just a quick question. When is this supposed to be done?
The access, it's already completed.
No, the whole project.
The end of the year.
Which year did they tell
This
you
year.
that? Good. Since they've changed their mind 3 times since we started this mess.
Just one question for,
Commissioner Blindberg.
thank you. Do you have any concerns about the agreement?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one quick question. Good morning, Mark. What's the situation on the ground regarding the employees? We have several parking availabilities across the street on Minnesota Avenue. Are employees able to park there and cross the road, or is there any plans of putting that in better shape?
Yeah, so recently, the city agreed to move some of the Jersey barriers on 6th in Minnesota so that employees can cross the construction area, but with caution, obviously. There will be times when that'll have to be closed off for when they're trenching in. And then there's been some discussions about doing the same thing on 4th Street, so that way staff can cross Minnesota there.
Just to follow up, are there any discussions about leasing additional parking for employees?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Would there be any need to? I haven't heard of any complaints about needing it, but
Right, no, I don't think so, as long as they have a path to cross Minnesota Avenue.
safely.
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
All right, look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second, call the roll.
Heisey,
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Kipley,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mark. A resolution establishing pay rates for qualified mental health professionals appointed by the Board of Mental Illness. Aaron? Morning.
Morning, Tom Weir, having Aaron Johnson with Board of Mental Illness. You'll probably see us again here in about a month with our budget presentation, but we're here today for something that was not included with that, and that was a pay rate increase for our qualified mental health professionals. When we were putting together a budget, we didn't realize that they had not had an increase since January 1st of 2020. 2021 was the last increase they had. And so they came to us recently after we had prepared our budget and requested an increase. And they've done great work for us. They are very efficient and always available weekends and holidays and things like that. And so they've requested an increase from the $110 rate to $130 per hour. And we're presenting that here for the commission here today to consider. And over the past couple of years, we've reduced our budget despite our numbers going up. But this is one thing we didn't really account for, and we want to account for it going forward year to year as well. We haven't put in any sort of escalator, but it's also something we need to consider, so we don't have to come back before you guys again here in 3 years, 4 years, whatever the case might be.
And just so the commission is aware, as you know, we're a joint board. We're the Minnehaha Lincoln County Board of Mental Illness. Lincoln County approved the increase to $130 an hour for our QMHPs on February 10th. So the Lincoln County patients, QMHPs who are seeing Lincoln County patients are able to bill Lincoln County the $130 an hour at this time. But yes, so we're asking for $130 an hour, and then we're asking for the escalator of 2.5% after the January 1st, 2027.
Okay. Anything else? Well, we go to public comment before we go to questions. So anybody from the public like to address this agenda item? Okay, Commission, I'll turn it over to you if you have questions.
Mr. Chair, I guess just a comment maybe with a question that Tom and Aaron can chime in, but I'm the liaison to these two, and they've done some great work, and I think the relationship with the QMHPs is vital, so we can't do our work without them. I guess I'm generally supportive of some kind of increase. I think they've laid out the case that they haven't received an increase in a few years, and maybe that is something we should consider an automatic escalator in to just bake that in going forward. I also appreciate that Lincoln County has already done this, and we ideally want to be standardized with Lincoln County. I guess I'd just note to my colleagues that ideally we do this in the normal budget process, and in theory we'd be debating this over the summer as part of the budget package, and then it would go into effect January 1, 2027. So kind of throwing that out there to see if there's any appetite among my colleagues to either adopt this and standardize with Lincoln County now, or is there a middle ground step that shows good faith and shows our appreciation to our QMHPs, and then we get to the Lincoln County level as part of our normal budget process that would go into effect January 1. So I'm open to either of those paths and just want to show good faith to our QMHPs that we are trying to get them to a more sustainable rate and kind of bake something in over time going forward. But those are my opening thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Commissioner Kipley's statements. Yes, and thank you for the work, and the board is an excellent partner for us. And it is something that I would agree that we probably need to look at because of the timing. It is a little bit more difficult just with the precedent, but to be a good partner, I would agree. I think I'd be open to a increase now to get to the 130 on the next budget cycle, just to try to incorporate that procedure as much as we can. Curious what my other colleagues would think.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the comments of colleagues. Before we kind of get to brass tacks of whether we should defer this or not, and what kind of increase we'll be looking at and voting on, I did had a couple questions. Personally, I don't know a huge amount of what you do on a regular basis. I wonder if you could perhaps speak to that, and the specific regard to retention and who can qualify to hold a position like this.
To hold a position, the
Oh,
QMHP
yeah.
position?
Correct.
These individuals have been with us for typically a long period of time. One of them in particular was with the board long before us. There was a board chair prior to us, and then there was a board chair prior to him, and one of our QMHPs dates back that far. They have training through the state, and then their day-to-day job, I mean, they deal with individuals who are suffering from a severe mental illness. They're making a recommendation to us on whether to continue a mental illness hold, or to release a mental illness hold. These are individuals, patients who are coming in on a mental illness hold that maybe are making homicidal threats or suicidal threats. They're not safe to be out in the community on their own. And these QMHPs are making recommendations about whether we should keep them on a hold or release them into the community.
And then they also testify at a hearing. If it goes to that point where we need to commit someone, the QMHP will testify at that hearing as to the recommendation as to why we should commit that individual.
And just for clarity, would this increase apply to both the board and those outside the board that are involved?
These are the court. We're just talking about board-appointed QMHPs. So these are just the individuals that are evaluating patients on mental illness holds.
Okay. And what sort of hours do they work? I know many of them have full-time jobs outside of it.
Well,
They called in at odd hours of the day, weekends, whenever there's a situation that arises.
They work holidays and weekends. They're typically during the day, not at night, but typically during the day. But they work holidays, weekends. We have mental illness holds on Christmas, for example, or Easter, or 4th of July. So they're working holidays.
And depending on volume, I mean, sometimes it's 7 or 8 at night.
Yes.
They're finishing up the full day.
Yes.
So just depends on the number of holds we have, but if there are a lot, yeah, they gotta continue to see them every 24 hours. So, if it's gonna take a longer day, it's gonna take a longer day, and they need to be available.
And they might see 25 people in a day.
And in the hours that they work, does this include hours on call or actual hours worked face-to-face with the patient?
Actual hours worked.
Do you have any idea what qualified mental health professionals are paid in other counties besides Lincoln or statewide? Is there sort of a state average, or how do we sort of compare here?
It's our understanding in Clay County that the QMHPs are reimbursed $170 an hour. I don't know what they're paid in other locations, however.
And that's probably volume dependent. Clay County doesn't have quite the numbers we have. And so that's why their rate's probably higher, because they need to be, they go and see an individual, they got a couple hours, and the next person comes in, and then they gotta be available again. Where here, we know we're gonna have people, we're gonna continue to have them see them.
And about how many mental health professionals are there appointed by the board in any given year? Are we talking 5 or 10? And roughly how many hours do they work on a weekly or yearly basis?
We have 2 full-time. We have Phil Loving, who works Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And then we have Jennifer Anderson, who works Thursdays and Fridays. And then we have Carla Salem, who does a couple weekends. She alternates weekends with Phil and Jennifer throughout the month. And then we have another one who is kind of a part-time QMHP, and she can be called in to help out when needed.
Okay, thank you. Just some general comments, not exactly a question, but frankly having a little bit of a hard time supporting this 16% pay increase with the attached 2.5% ongoing yearly increase in the interest of taxpayers. And personally, I'd be more amenable to a 10-hour hourly increase or approximately 8% increase without the baked-in annual increases of that 2.5%. And I do think there's some wisdom in reviewing the increases each year or so many years, so the pay increases don't get away from economic conditions and the ability of the taxpayers to fund the service. I'm open to more conversation and dialogue about this. And generally, at this point, I'm feeling we should maybe defer or table this until the normal budget cycle, just so we can take a closer look.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my middle ground position was going to be increasing from 110 to 120 effective April 1 of this year, just as a sign of good faith that these folks are doing their best to manage a budget of this Board of Mental Illness. And I think this just got away from us for 4 years, that since 2021 anyway, that we haven't given this increase. But I kind of want to do the full increase and any automatic escalator within the kind of normal operations of our budget process. I think when we looked at your budget, going to 120 you had enough room in your budget that I think 120 was going to keep you within budget, kind of in the spirit of all of our other department heads that asked for various supplements and carryovers in that spirit of an earlier budget item. I think an earlier agenda item today, I think moving you to 120 kind of just basically lets you use your budget properly and shows a sign of appreciation to the QMHPs. I think this has come up just in the last month. I think at our JDC, the demand for QMHPs at the juvenile level, we needed to adjust that rate. So while I don't know that the sentiment of my colleagues is to get you to the full 130 right now. Maybe as we get to the point for action, Mr. Chair, maybe we can propose an amendment to this resolution and just get you to 120 today would be my intent. And then bring you back. It sounded like you said you're going to be back in a month. We're already kind of reaching that point where we're getting annual presentations from different groups and baking in over this summer. And then I think that's where we could probably separately debate the merits of an automatic escalator and if we have precedent for that as well. But anyway, that's where I'm at today is prepared to get you to the 120, I think is what's going to work within your existing budget for this calendar year. And then we'll tackle 2027 when the time is right.
Thank you, Commissioner Kipley. I'm on the same page as you. Going from 110 to 120 would be the equivalent of about a 2.5% increase per year, roughly. And then I just have a hard time doing this out of budget cycle. We have other requests that we've been telling them the same thing. We have a budget process we go through, and I am willing to look at, through a good faith, as you call it, Commissioner, that we maybe make some motion. I don't know how it got away from us for the last 5 years that we didn't do anything. So, I feel a little bit guilty for that. So I'm okay with a 120. And then next month we start the budget cycle and we look at increases according to what the needs are at the time. So.
And to that, Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I think it's going to take some coordination with our friends in Lincoln County, because I think ideally we try to get the same rate effective with Lincoln County as of January 1, 2027. It'd be nice if it was standardized. So I think when we're simultaneously going through budget process, so maybe that's not 130, maybe it's 135. But I think we want to sync up with Lincoln County on a board that crosses the county lines. And so while it's my intent to get to a motion where we get you to 120 today, I think that's going to take some coordination with our counterparts in the county through the budget process, and then we try to settle on something that syncs up effective January 1. I appreciate that they went to 130 already, but ideally we consult and coordinate those things a little bit better going forward. But that's my thoughts on the coordination going into next year.
I'm going to put our administrative officer on the spot. Tom, do you have anything that we could use as an amendment to the proposed?
Based on what was said, I would amend the existing resolution to read 120 effective April 1st and delete the "be it further resolved" paragraph.
Okay.
Because that eliminates the escalator and allows time to revisit the resolution.
Okay. We don't have a motion yet, but that, I was just curious what it would take. So any other comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Benega.
I do agree with what the basic conversations about and getting it to 120. I also would like to remind people of the fact that in our juvenile justice facility, about 85% of those young people have mental health related issues. And frankly, the need for the services that you guys provide, not only literally on the street and in institutions, are crazy kinds of responsibilities. And to be honest, the alternative for this is not reasonable. In most cases, you hit these individuals at the time that they need to be seen almost immediately, and we appreciate those services. And I'd hate to be responsible for not responding quickly enough or not having the support that we need. So I will support the 120, and I think we do need to, in the budget process, reconsider what we're doing for 2027.
Okay.
I just comment and say I would agree. We could raise it to 120 effective April 1st and have some further discussion during the normal budget cycle.
I will need a motion to move that forward.
Okay. Mr. Chair, are we going to do, so we have a draft resolution in our packet here. Would you like a motion to amend in order and then pass the amended resolution? So we need two votes in succession. Is that what we're looking for? Okay, so I'll make that motion to amend Resolution MC 26 that's in our packet to strike 130 per hour and replace with 120 per hour, and to strike the second resolved clause that has the escalator.
Second.
Motion and a second to amend the proposed resolution. I think it's a resolution, yes. Do I need a roll call on that?
Yeah.
Roll call vote then.
Kipley,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. So the motion to amend the resolution is approved. Now we need
I'll make a
motion
motion
to pass it.
to, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution MC 26 as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Kipley,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Emergency Management, Rural Ambulance Quality Assurance, Rural Fire Department Annual Presentation. A lot of familiar faces, all just a little bit older.
I'll kind of quickly go through mine and allow some more time for those folks back there. Most of you know what the role of emergency management is. I'm going to quickly go through these slides. I want to get through one at the end, but police reserves, right now we do have a class going on to get some new police reserves. It's been a couple years since we've been able to hold one due to lack of interest and people kind of dropping out in the middle of the classes in the session. Again, rescue squad, they do multiple things. We've added one addition to that, and I'll get that towards the end here. Dive team. It's been interesting over the years. I've had numerous interest in divers, less interest maybe in rescue and police reserves. That has changed again. Now there's more interest in rescue and less interest in dive. I don't know what the reason for that is, but it just kind of ebbs and flows, and it kind of works itself out in the end, but we're always looking for people that want to do these volunteer positions. Some of the other things we provide, weather service liaison, and I'm a liaison, rural ambulance, rural fire, and then I work with the state quite a bit. One of the things that we've added last year was a drone team, and that is comprised of other members from each one of these groups. And we've also included the sheriff's office in that. Last year, the sheriff's office drone was at the end of life, and we were looking for an alternative to actually have that capability. And the volunteer rescue squad stepped up as they had donation funds available. With my agreement that we would eventually purchase another one with county funds. And they were able to step up and purchase that drone with the funds that they've solicited on their own to kind of get through until I could come up with the funds to do it. Now, last year, you talk about the carryovers. So last year, I was able to save some money and get enough to buy another drone. Well, with the rules and purchasing and some of the laws that came in, we couldn't purchase that until later in the year. So we carried that money over, and you're allowed to carry that money over. And now we're going to be able to purchase another one to keep that more capable, and then we'll make that team grow. So we do appreciate that. Again, I went through this quick, but if you have any questions about emergency management, I'd be happy to answer them.
Public comment on the emergency management portion of this.
What I can do now is turn it over to Rural Fire as themselves and myself have a meeting coming up here at about 10 again, so. Rural Fire?
Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Koopman, Fire Chief in the Baltic Fire Department and current President of the County Fire Chiefs Association. Just a quick rundown of last year's activities, and I appreciate your time speaking with you today. I represent the 14 fire departments, the 3 ambulances, the EM, and our association. Last year, again, as we continue to grow in the metro area, things like that, we've responded last year to over 3,500 calls for service, including every notification of a controlled burn that might be going on in our respective territory. The ambulances responded to over 2,000 calls for service as well. So as our area continues to grow, again, we just get busier and busier. About this time last year, we discussed the controlled burning issue and whether or how we can get that process moving quicker to enact those burn bans and things like that. So the way the winter has gone, the way things are going now, maybe not so much today, but maybe next week, that we'll probably be in conversations again soon with maybe having to issue those as well, just for public safety of everyone there. Work closely again with Metro Communications on a daily basis. We have a couple different committee groups that we meet with. Again, as Director Gearman mentioned, we have a users committee group that meets once a month, talking about any issues that maybe have come up over the last month. Try to get those notified daily to smooth that out as far as procedures and things like that. Again, trying to keep an even process for everybody in the county, including the city of Sioux Falls. We also are working through our, basically run cards drive our call, who gets to go to calls or who needs to get to these calls. And so we're working through those to clear up any older run cards issues, whether it be the right units not being recommended through CAD and things like that. So kind of a lengthy process, but again, needs to be cleaned up to continue on with kind of how everybody does business these days. We're also working with them as well on radio purchasing, where we make sure that we are getting the right equipment to do the job with the system that we have in place. So several different models of radios are available. We are continuing, like I said, to make sure that we get the right ones that are able to do the job that we need. So whether it's connecting to Wi-Fi and things like that, that we are starting to see more of in working in larger buildings, facilities, schools, things like that. So last year we finished off clearing it up and reallocating our, re-signing our automatic aid agreement with every department in the county, fire department in the county, as well as our partners outside of our county. So the McCook County, McCook, Lake, Moody, Lincoln, and Turner County departments that are kind of right on the edge, so that we can get assistance from them as well if we get into those specific corners of the county and just need more resources. So that's been going very well. We've had that in place for, I want to say, since the late 90s or whatever. We just kind of continue to evolve that and include more people into that. As personnel become less and less during daytime hours and even nighttime hours, you never know who's around. So right now, we are working again, as we continue every year, to offer a certified firefighter class. We currently have 16 students in the certified class. Every year, it seems to be about that 15 to 23 range that we put through those classes. And there is quite an expense to that, whether we're training, using monies to pay for training props and or instructors. And so that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with here again, as far as coming up with some funds to take care of that process as well. But again, we continue to keep training those newer people up to that state certified level. Other than that, is there any questions from you guys at all at this time?
Just one question. Thank you. The 16 students that you referenced, are those county-wide? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We offer that to everybody in the county. And once in a while, like if somebody nearby hears that we're doing a class and maybe they have a one or two people, like I think we've had some people from T, join the class as well and things like that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, that's kind of our year in a nutshell. Again, I appreciate the time today to hear this, and then I fully support or like you to support those groups. There's a lot of them that do their own little pancake breakfast, things like that, open houses, and encourage the communities to come out and see that equipment that we have, and what we're capable of doing, and the time and effort that goes into learning how that stuff works and respond on a moment's notice. That's a big deal. There's a lot of pride in that equipment and being able to provide that service. So appreciate the people that show up to that, and then without leaving out the employers that allow us to leave our jobs in the middle of the day, in the middle of a project, middle of a meeting, to go do that stuff. Without their help, daytime help is shorthanded, as most people maybe work in the city here, or whatever, and can't respond out. Those that allow us to go, we do appreciate that as well. So, again, thank you for your time.
Rural fire departments, are we done, Jason? Okay, so we got rural ambulance coming up yet? Appreciate the fact that none of you had to jump up and leave, so we're okay for right now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dr. Jeff Luther, the Quality Assurance Physician for the County Primary Service Ambulance, or Primary Service Areas for Minnehaha County Ambulances. Do we have a slide there, Tom, or should I just go through? There we go, that's good. Thank you. I've got a report here that kind of goes through the 2025 summary of activities and responses in the quality assurance measures, or key performance indicators. I do have the War and Peace version, but I was told to abbreviate that a bit for this meeting. But there's lots of stuff in it. All the commissioners, I think, will get a copy, but tons and tons of good information in here. How I gathered this information, I have to thank my analysts that helped me with this behind the scenes, because with the advent of the electronic health record, we've been able to capture all sorts of data. 15 years ago, believe it or not, this was all done by hand, and I'd literally have to go through the orchard myself and pick the red apples and the green apples. But now with that technology change, and with our current state-sponsored platform is Image Trend, so all the services use Image Trend to enter their data for patient records, and I can access that. I've been doing this for quite a while, and if we recall how years ago, when this ambulance ordinance was first developed, they were looking for a quality assurance physician. I ended up being that person. And per the ordinance, there were some things that we looked at for what do we need to look at that I think is mandatory. And we have a list of those, which would be our trauma calls, cardiac arrest, pediatric calls, and then there was like a 25% selection of random calls that I would review, among other things. With that we've been able to provide a report that kind of gives a good overall. And before I forget, I want to just say overarching how good of a job that our services do in the county. And then when I first started doing this, it was majority of volunteer. And I don't want to miss anybody not understanding the acronyms, but it was BLS at that time, Volunteer Basic Life Support, or EMTs. And since the county has adopted the primary service area licensing and funding, that's now evolved into, I'd call it a high-performance system. So that's working quite well. So this first slide I've got, over the entire system, starts with the 911 Metro Communications. Our system here is an accredited center of excellence. We refer to that as an ACE accredited center. There's only 144 of them in the country, and only 2 of them in South Dakota. So through the expertise and the knowledge and the commitment from those that are involved, this center is doing an awesome job, and that's where all of this business starts. We have our first responders, which is our volunteer fire departments, and we have our sheriff's deputies, which some are EMTs that are excellent first responders. And there's 5 primary service areas. Next slide, please, thanks. And then just as an overview, we had 2,303 calls. These are 911 dispatch calls. This is about a 1% decrease from last year. And the most common call types are transfers, remains kind of the number one. Sick persons, which is a big batch of calls that are dispatched out. We really don't know what they end up being. And it could be babies with fevers. It can be people that have felt weak or lightheaded or just unknown problems, but that falls into the sick person category. And from there, on the main report, I've got that broken down even more granular. falls, breathing problems, and then our injury, accidents, or trauma. What's changed over 25? I also sit in on the advisory council for the Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners. Historically, that was, again, ALS, Advanced Life Support. We just monitored and licensed and any disciplinary or actions taken against a paramedic, that's what we did. In 25, that expanded into from the Office of Rural Health. They decided to move all of the EMT, the basic life support people, into the Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners for their licensing and the same sort of oversight. So that's added quite a bit to that advisory council. So that's been one of the changes. Also, changes of the American Heart Association, our guidelines changed in 25. Basically, that's our go-to resource for developing protocols. They'd come out with an update every 5 years since about 2020 was the last one. So last one was October of 25. Lots of changes in that. That impacts all of our protocols as we develop those. And fortunately, we've got a unified protocol for the county. The city develops an evidence-based, consensus-driven, peer-reviewed set of protocols that are reviewed each year and updated. And the county primary service areas, for the most part, follow that, so that makes the whole system a lot easier and homogeneous. So those are some of the changes for 25. Now we'll just go into kind of some of the highlights. And this next slide depicts the run times summary. It takes start to finish, these primary service areas, these ambulances, about 85 minutes from dispatch until they're back in service and ready to respond again. And again, per the ambulance ordinance, if you all don't remember, that's set where if a requesting party calls 911, the call taker processes the calls and then notifies the ambulance in that district. The ambulance district or service then has 60 seconds to respond that they received that notification, and then it just goes down the line. They got 10 minutes to be in response to the station, which years ago that was more of an issue because there wasn't anybody in-house. Most of them now have in-house providers, so they're able to be dispatched relatively quickly. I have all those numbers as well, but other numbers that we trend out are the average unit arrived to the scene, what's the scene time, which is critically important in certain clinical time-sensitive scenarios, our heart attack calls, our stroke calls, and especially trauma. So we watch as close as we can the scene time portion of the entire run call. And as I had said before, in the next slide, 91% of responses now are ALS. We still have some BLS only response, but that's gradually shrinking over time. It's being replaced with advanced life support capabilities in all of our ambulance services. So 91% for 28 or 25 are all ALS. I'll go through each primary service area quickly with just some call volumes. And again, each one of these, I have some specific detail if anybody's interested in more specific data per primary service area. So if we look at Humboldt first, there was 298 calls, and that's broken down in that pie graph you can see of the call types. And overall, their volume was up 3.1% over the year before. Next slide is Del Rapids. There are 553 calls, which is down slightly, about 3.32%. And again, the call matrix and the makeup, if you will, are listed in that pie graph. Jasper Ambulance is a small little postage stamp sized primary service area that's been around forever. I'm not sure, I think there's been some mention about incorporating that area, but for now they exist in their own area. They're great people over there. They had 5 dispatches for the year, no transports, and there were no reports for me to review. So they did show up to our recent governance meeting that we had, and it was kind of interesting to talk to those people. You'd think that a small system like that, how do they sustain? And obviously this isn't their book of business. They've got more in the city of Jasper and then that area in Minnesota. But they've got a lot of people in the wings, volunteer, young folks that are willing to come on board to help them. So it was refreshing to hear that. Garrettson, bit of just a slight anomaly there. There are 233 calls, but they're down from 17.6%. And this appears to be primarily due to their EMS transfer volume, which is down about 31%. And that's the numbers reflect 90 in 24 down to about 62 in 25. So it makes it look like it's a big decrease in call volume. And I've got a call out to a friend of mine who's a case manager at one of the nursing home facilities to see if there has been some regulatory change. I think they're still going on, but for some reason through the EMS transfer volume, that is down that percentage. Next is MedStar Ambulance. 981 calls, which is up a bit at 2.08%. Patient Care EMS, that's the ambulance that provides services in Sioux Falls. Their primary service area involved 238 calls, which is up slightly at 5.78%. Got a slide on the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office first responders. Their volume was 1,018, and they remain the fastest responders, which makes sense with the rubber already on the road. They're able to deploy Narcan, AEDs, provide scene safety. I've mentioned this to other EMS directors about how we did this, and they're very impressed by this. We started this. This will be one of Sheriff Milstead's many legacy accomplishments. I approached him and said that we were having some issues, like all systems go through some EMS difficulty with their ambulance services because of the volunteer and especially rural. And one of the ideas that we came up with was, well, could we train some of the deputies to be EMTs? And so the sheriff jumped on that, and he had that up and implemented in a short period of time. We trained these EMTs, these deputies as EMTs, so they've been a tremendous amount of help in the county. And I think you could poll or talk to any one of the primary service areas, ambulance services, and you'd get good testimony about their response and their benefit of assistance. And then the next slide, kind of what you pay me for, is I reviewed 694 patient care records. And again, those that are mandated by the ordinance, the cardiac arrests, I pull all of those, pediatric calls, strokes, trauma, and then that random selection. Some of the more detailed quality improvement review are cardiac arrests because of all the caveats that go with a cardiac arrest. There's a whole flow. In the city, we do what's called pit crew CPR because we have fire department response, police department response, our ambulance response, and we call it pit crew because basically there's 4 points on the patient where whoever gets there first has a duty or a job function to perform. But it's applicable at sometimes in the county, but obviously sometimes there isn't the other providers or the extra hands there. I got all of the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office reports. They get those to me. They don't follow the image trend that's different, so those are a different report format. Those are still done longhand, but they're pretty easy to do. The follow-ups that I've had to do for those that have fell out for a more tertiary review, those, I do have a slide for that, but basically what happens with the call, if there's something that's outside of an expected algorithm, then I can contact I first start with the ambulance service themselves and get the more information about what I've seen in the call and what may have happened. Sometimes I talk with the medic themselves, but universally these are all resolved and They're very responsive, those that I've had to contact, and I've had to follow up with the medical directors on three occasions for 25. And again, the nature of the call where there was a concern was remedied. There was no untoward outcomes whatsoever. So that is a great way to review the calls for me, is that I have the record, and then I get the response from the service and the medical director if I need to. One final filter that we do have for review, if there is a concern, is the destination themselves. Occasionally, I get a call from one of the ER doctors about a call. I can get that call accessed and pulled up and then follow through with that, and then we get back to the concerned destination or medical provider at the hospital. We had to do that 3 times in 25. Again, all were resolved without any kind of issue or problem. This next slide, since I had mentioned briefly about the basic, or I don't like that word, but our EMTs that are now moved over into the Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners of that advisory council for monitoring, I was interested in just how many are out there in our state. And we still have, if you see the number of EMT I-85s, that's a kind of an intermediary trained EMT. They have some adjunctive or additional skills at the EMT, but not all that the paramedic does. We also have some advanced EMTs, which is a similar thing, but with a little bit more detail in their scopes of practice allowances. There was a thing at one time called EMT I-99. I don't know if we have any of those left at all. I don't even know if there's any formal training or certification process for them. But in the state, we have just a little under 1,000 paramedics out there, and then 2,300 and some registered basic EMTs across the state. Next slide is, which I thought was kind of an interesting of our paramedics in each age group. I was very surprised to see there's still some old duffers out there that are active paramedics in some of these communities, 4 of them over 80. And likewise on the extreme end of the scale, we got some that are right at 18 or just turned 18 years old. So it's a career choice. The training is out there. There's lots of need for it. I think there's lots of opportunity all over the place for our paramedics. We are looking at other resources for our paramedics, community resource paramedic, community paramedicine program. Makes a lot of sense. That's a detailed discussion. But I know that there's other systems, including our city, that are kind of looking at that. So having said that, without an auctioneer speed, if there's any questions, and again, I've got this detailed report too, that's kind of the War and Peace version, if anybody wants to go through that, or if you have any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to take a stab at it.
Thank you, Dr. Luther. I do have one question on your pie charts, and there seems to be very little deviation from each of the services. Again, trauma, obviously, car accident, fall off a roof. Medical could be a heart attack, it could be a stroke, it could be a high fever, that type of thing. Am I tracking right with what you're, and what's a transfer?
Okay, the transfers are transfers from the hospital to the nursing home, from the nursing home to the hospital, and those typically will go through the 911 dispatch area, which is what we can trend. If you think, well, why do we have to transfer a patient from the nursing home to the hospital, non-emergent, and why does that go through 911? There's a lot of logistics in that. We want to know where the ambulances are, especially in these primary service areas, and we want to keep track of those. And you're exactly right about the, and I do have in detail as far as I can go on the call types that fall within that medical. And medical always is the biggest call. Trauma is behind that. But there are some nuances with this. If you look at Humboldt and their trauma, the kind of trauma that Humboldt sees is always been historically so impressive. Some terrible traumas out there along the interstate. So those are some particulars. I mean, all the services have their industrial, agricultural types of trauma, but also motor vehicle collisions too.
Other questions? Jason, do we have anybody else?
Unless ambulance is gonna do something, I think we're good.
2 seconds. I promise mine is not the War and Peace version. Ryan Sedick with Del Rapids Ambulance. Just want to say thank you for all your continued support. Jeff gave you a lot of great information today. I just want to highlight, specifically here in Dells, we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. I know Humboldt's been around just a little bit longer. Tim's a little older. Garrettson is in that same realm as well. And I just want to highlight that, 50 plus years of service from each of the rural ambulance services really just kind of highlights, how much of a local commitment we have from our communities. From the days that started as a volunteer service to the days now where we're being supported by townships, municipalities, the county, it's been amazing to see how much it has grown. One of the big things that we are doing this year, and we've talked about it before, but we have signed with Fitch and Associates to do a study in Minnehaha County. They're going to be looking at the feasibility, sustainability of rural EMS. We expect to have that report probably somewhere around midsummer. So hopefully right around budget season, we should hopefully have some information back on that. I also want to point out, though, with that we have been studying it a lot. We hear a lot of terms like sustainability and regionalization being thrown out in EMS. When it comes to regionalization, nobody really has a definition of what that means. When we look at all of these studies, not to be blunt, but at some point we're going to have to stop studying it and probably take some action, right? Whether it's stuff that you don't like, we don't like, or nobody likes, right? We are going to have to take some action at some point. With that, I just want to thank you guys for continued support. We're proud of everything that we're doing in the county. We're committed to continuing to show up for our communities. And at the end of the day, our goal is very simple. If somebody needs to call 911 in our communities, we're going to be there. We're going to be ready. So thank you.
Thank you. Nobody wants to think about you guys a whole lot until they actually need you, so appreciate it.
Morning, Commissioners. Tim Even, Humboldt Fire and Ambulance Service. As stated, we've been in the business for a little over 60 years now. We cover about 280 square miles of western Minnehaha County, probably the western third, as well as a few sections in McCook County, just due to the natural barriers of like the Vermilion River. It's a little quicker for us to get there than would be one out of Salem for their ambulance. So we do cover a little bit of McCook County as well as the municipalities of Humboldt and Hartford. As Dr. Luther stated, we had roughly about 300 calls for service this last year. And with that, I guess it was mentioned by Ryan that we do seek funding also, not just from you folks, but we do go to the townships and municipalities as a way of helping out our financial needs. I will say something that came to mind here as we were sitting last Saturday night, sitting in church before Mass, and I only throw that in there to make you think I'm a nice guy. We were called to a vehicle fire on the interstate, and while en route to that, our ambulance, I guess the fire call was for Hartford and Humboldt for a vehicle fire. While en route to that, our ambulance and Hartford Fire was called to a medical emergencies in Hartford's territory. When we got on scene, Highway Patrol, the deputy with the sheriff's office was there. While putting out the vehicle fire, Hartford was called to another incident of a vehicle rollover. So law enforcement had to leave for that. Colton Fire came down to help out with that one. And thinking about it, I guess once the dust settled, that, the collaboration of public safety in the Minnehaha County is nothing short of amazing. People step up to help out, and, they talk of it as a three-legged stool between fire, EMS, and law enforcement. And I think that is very true. So, like I said, ask for your continued support for all of those individuals. And I guess with that, if you have any questions for me.
Thank you.
If not, if I may, in memory of my grandmother, who while growing up had the last name of Malloy. May the winds of fortune sail you. May you sail a gentle sea. May it always be the other guy who says, "This drink's on me."
There you go.
Thank you much.
Morning, Commissioners. Curtis Nelson, Director Garrettson Ambulance. So in the interest of time, I'll keep it really brief. Just to follow up a little bit on Commissioner Karski's question about transfers. In Garrettson, we were down, our call volume was down a little bit last year. A lot of that was transfers. Part of that was just some changes at Metro Communications, the way they were coding their calls. So we were running a lot of those same calls. They weren't called transfer. They were medical or something else. So when we get called for a transfer, it's not necessarily like a non-emergency. When we get called for a transfer, it is an emergency call. It is a 911 call, and it is for if it's coming out of a facility. So people in nursing homes obviously get sick, they fall down and get injured. They have the same types of problems that anybody else does. But if they've been evaluated by a healthcare professional, like a nurse at a nursing home, then that goes through a different dispatch process at Metro. They don't have to ask all the same questions they would ask a layperson. So they code it as transfer because it's kind of a shortcut for how that goes. So those calls that we see as transfer in those pie charts are not taking people to doctor's appointments. Those are actually medical emergencies. They just go through a different dispatch process. So a lot of the call volume drop that we saw last year was actually related to our mutual aid calls. In 2024, we did a lot of mutual aid to our surrounding communities. We actually saw a decrease in that last year, and that was kind of the biggest drop that we saw on our side as well. So happy answering any other questions. Like I say, in the interest of time, we'll keep it brief.
Thank you. All right. Good batch of presentations here, annual. Appreciate it. Appreciate definitely what you guys all do. Men and women of the community. Any public comment on this agenda item? All right, moving on then. We have our sheriff's office.
Mr. Chair, I have one quick question, if I may. It'd probably be directed towards Dr. Luther. There was a study that was mentioned during the presentation that'll be completed sometime this summer, if all goes according to plan, I assume. Could you speak to what exactly is being addressed or looked at in that study and how that could help inform our long-term decisions as a commission?
You know, my first response is, which one are we talking about? But if we talk about the Fitch study, which is one of these studies, but there's been several studies that we've looked at that are ongoing now, and we've had several, some of which I haven't even seen the results yet of, that the state has sponsored. But we're looking at issues that's impacting EMS in general, especially the volunteer and the rural services. They're collapsing. Even though I said that if I showed the slide of the number of EMS people that are out there is just a quick snapshot right now. But who's coming into the system to replace, especially our volunteer services? So there is the concept of regionalization, which is as vague, I think, in my opinion, as the term regionalization. How would that look and how does that work? So there's been lots of look-ats, if you will, consolidating, and we're trying to get ahead of that before all those systems are forced into making some sort of change. We still have, the esprit de corps of the volunteer services. They're fiercely committed, but if they're not being replaced, then what's going to happen with them in the future? And through technology and through, I think, other advancements, we're looking at more regionalization, whether it's telemedicine, with cameras in the actual ambulances themselves to help. But we still are so broad geographically. How can we get this where when you call 911, someone will answer, and when you do call 911, somebody will respond. And one of the things that happened this year in the legislature was that the recognizing EMS as an essential service was killed. And we can look at that and talk for hours on what's the benefit of recognizing EMS as an essential service, and depends on what side of the fence that you're on. But the fact still remains that when the public calls 911, they expect an ambulance to show up if they need it. So they're looking at those sorts of things, among others, and other resources, funding, billing. There's been changes in how ambulance can bill, which is not good. It seems like they are constantly under some sort of a change that's negatively impacts their return. Is it kind of?
Yeah, more or less answers the question.
Because there's lots of them that are going out there, but the one that's going around now, and Fitch and Associates, they've done a couple studies in the city, and they're well recognized. I think they're probably the ivory tower of consultants in terms of EMS, both rural, urban, and big city.
Be interesting to see the results of that study and the other ones that are being conducted. And I think it'll be a multifaceted approach between the state and local governments to
absolutely
get a handle on it.
Yes, I agree. And I think that, we'll see change. And we've seen change in the EMS. From what I've seen over the last 10 years, has been phenomenal. And that's a world of difference from the previous 10 years. So EMS is really evolving. Hopefully we can sustain it.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll throw in just one comment for further context. Last year, we looked at our 3 rural ambulance partners, Humboldt, Del Rapids, and Garrettson, and we kept their funding flat for a year. And part of the message back to them was study for efficiencies. And so I think it's a sign in good faith that they secured a grant from the state to pay for such a study. They hired Fitch, a reputable consultant, to do so. And so when we're getting ready this summer to look at budget, and we know that the taxpayer dollars are subsidizing these services, but that they're being as efficient as they can be. And speaking of just generally to regionalization, I think we're going to get some of that picture painted because Sioux Falls had a Fitch study about a year ago now. T just got a report in the last few months, and so Lincoln County is looking at this issue as well. Lennox is looking at an ambulance tax district as a way to subsidize theirs, and then now we'll have a report for kind of northern Minnehaha County outside of Sioux Falls city limits. So I think Fitch talking with the guys, I think we could invite even Fitch to give us that assessment in person and give us, maybe paint that picture from their experience. South side of Sioux Falls, a T report, Sioux Falls itself, and then the rural Minnehaha County report. I think we could start to paint a picture of what are the efficiencies and synergies across those areas. How do we work together? But it's still going to take some support like this leaders of the ambulance systems talked about. It's a team effort of townships, municipalities, and counties. It's not going to just be Minnehaha County subsidizing this. So we got to keep many hands makes lighter work, I guess. And so it's going to continue to be a team effort.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Luther. Now we're ready, Sheriff.
Morning, Commissioners. Mike Milstead, Minnehaha County Sheriff. I was hoping all the ambulance and fire people hadn't left yet so I could make a pitch for them. They just do an incredible job in our county. I live in a service area for Hartford Fire and Humboldt Ambulance, and I'm just amazed at the volunteerism. They're the hub of their local communities, and to think, that they work as hard as they do for little or no pay. Well, no pay for the firefighters, and they just have some paid staff on the ambulances, but they're just an incredible resource for our public safety and also for my deputies who interact with them every day. And so if they were still here, I would tell them they're doing a yeoman's job. Well, I've got roughly 275 employees, 535 people in jail today. We feed 1,500 meals a day, as you heard earlier when Mark came up and wanted to make sure we could get our delivery. It was made pretty clear to the construction crews that with 1,500 meals a day, we need to be able to get deliveries of food to the jail or we're going to have some big problems. So I thought the best thing to do, instead of trying to cover all of our divisions, would be to bring my command staff. I will say one thing about my career with the Sheriff's Office, and that is I've been really fortunate that working with my staff and working with County Human Services or Human Resources, we've been really picky about who we hire and even more picky about who we promote. And so I am very fortunate that as I leave the department at the end of the year, whenever that is, that I've got the A team in place in my staff, whether that's correctional officers, deputy sheriffs, whether it's my sergeants, my lieutenants, my captains, my chief deputy, that I've got the best of the best, and I'm very fortunate to have them. So I brought my command staff today. Joe Bosman is here, Captain Adam Zishka, Captain Josh Phillips, Warden Madsen, Chief Deputy Gromer, and Jason Gearman, our emergency manager. And so instead of having everybody present, we're just going to do 2 presentations. One of them will be from Mike Madsen, our warden, and the second will be from Adam Zishka, our captain over our uniform division or our patrol side. And then I'll end with a couple comments, and we'll have the right people in the room for any questions that you might have following that. So, Warden Madsen.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Matson from the jail. I'm just going to highlight some of the things that I wrote in the memo. I'm sure you've all had time to read it. Overall, 2025 was a good year. I would be remiss if I didn't extend gratitude to the staff that we have, the job that they do every day. We have amazing officers that work for us that make that jail operate as smoothly as it does. Another thank you would be to the job that my lieutenants and HR have done in recruiting quality officers to welcome into our staff. We have not had near the problems that a lot of correctional facilities have had throughout the country over the last few years. The good thing that I can report is regarding turnover. In 2025, we reduced our turnover to 16%. Historically, we had been as high as 31% in 2021. That reduced to 25% in 22, 24% in 23, 19% in 24, and now we're at 16%. And I was just curious, and I kind of broke that number down a little bit, and this is not in the memo, but we like to think of working in the jail as a springboard job into law enforcement, and it's a starting point for a lot of people that want to get into a law enforcement career. We have several staff that have transitioned from corrections officers to deputies and are now patrol deputies. We've had several people transition to Sioux Falls PD, other law enforcement agencies. So when I think of turnover, that's good turnover. They're doing something positive in our career, in our profession. And then retirements. I have a hard time counting a retirement as a negative turnover. So when you take those two things out, our turnover excluding promotions and retirements is only 8.6%. And that can be attributed to a lot of things. I think the highlights are a lot of the things that the commission has done over the last few years, whether it's the retention bonus, the salary changes, but we always appreciate your support for what we do. Some of the other highlights, I touch on some statistics every year. Documentation-wise, we have a rule of thumb. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So our documentation is up for the year by 18%, but certain categories have gone down. Inmate on inmate assaults reduced slightly. Assaults on staff has reduced from 28 to only 17 and 25. And most of the other things stayed pretty much the same. Number of bookings in 25 was consistent with 2024, about 16,000. And our average length of stay is remaining at 12 days. One thing that has changed is our average daily population in 2025 was 530. This is an increase from 506 in 2024. I included a graph that shows a good representation of the different inmates that we have in the jail, whether it's Minnehaha County, Lincoln, state inmates, federal inmates. and then there's an other category. But that bar graph shows the trend up, and it is kind of trending the same. It has had a little bit downward trend toward December, but we're staying on about that 530, 535 average daily population. Over the last few years, we've indicated that we're going to continue to monitor that with the expectation of the Unit Control 3 expansion needing to come to fruition at some point. We're still looking at it, but the more we look at it, the more we're looking that we've delayed this as probably as long as we can go unless something drastic changes in the next few months. We had previously delayed 14 hires for that UC3 expansion. That was initially slotted for 2024, so I think we've done a good job with managing the manageables, I'll say. Managing our U.S. Marshal inmates in the facility, that's the biggest one that we can really control. And we have brought in increased revenue than what we've projected with those bed rentals, but that's on the decline at this point because I don't have as many beds to rent. 2025, we did bring in $500,000 more than what was projected, but as I said, 2026 is probably not going to look the same. Looking ahead, looking at 2027, you can anticipate seeing additional positions planned for the Unit Control 3 expansion. We outline that to stagger it, and that's still our intent. Other than that, that's basically it in a nutshell. Again, we have amazing staff. I very much appreciate your support, and I'll stand by for questions if you have any.
Warden, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
24 people a day doesn't sound like a huge number, but what's our cost for a prisoner a day? $125 roughly?
Our daily bed rate at this point is $130-$190.
Okay, so that's $3,000 a day, 365 days. That's $1 million a year for 24 extra prisoners a day. So
right.
Most people don't think about doing that math. Oh, it's only 24, but that's $1 million.
Right, and the driver is not rental beds. The driver is the number of Minnehaha County inmates that are in custody. And the programs that we have 24/7, pretrial services, those have been monumental in keeping people out in the community and being able to sustain their home life and be employed and not be in the jail. But for whatever reason, those numbers creep up.
Other questions? Commissioner Kipley.
Just to clarify, have we made an affirmative decision to go forward with the expansion, or is that still monitoring numbers?
Not formally yet.
Okay. But I take it you'll be back and we'll be talking about that and any other adjustments you need into budget. But we've already authorized those positions, so you have the green light to begin hiring and doing that. It's just a matter of if you need any additional support and looking forward into the operations of 2027 for that budget season as well.
Correct. The 14 positions are included in the 2026 budget starting July 1. But we'll definitely communicate if that's what our intention is.
Ask a question.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you. Thank you. I just was curious, you mentioned the large drop in assaults on staff. Do you have any idea what's that attributed to? What led to that? Training or facility or?
I think it's always a combination of things. I think it's how our staff deal with certain situations. I think it's I don't know. Over the years, it's gone up and up. So I was expecting a point where it was it's got to start coming down at some point. I would like to think that it's because of how our staff are trained, how they treat the people in custody, and when you do it right, better things happen.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
I just got to mention, when I did Leadership Sioux Falls a couple decades ago, Sheriff Milstead was there, and when we toured the jail, just hammered on, these people that are inmates here are brothers and sisters and fathers, and we want to get them and keep them active members in our communities. Some people maybe do need to do some jail time, but they are still members of our community. So, and one thing that always stuck with me, Mike, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll bring Captain Adam Zishka up now.
Morning, Commissioners, Chair. My name is Adam Zizka. I'm the captain for the Patrol Division in the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office. I sent a memo out. I'm sure you guys have had time to review it quickly, so I'll just stick to some highlights that I wanted to mention for our Patrol Division. The first, I'm proud to say, we're fully staffed currently. I travel around the state a fair amount, talking to law enforcement, my cohorts that have moved on in their law enforcement careers, and I'm pretty confident that geographically we are blessed, and we are one of the only offices or departments in the state to be fully staffed the way we are. Our retention is incredibly low, but one of the things that the captains have worked really hard on is our hiring, as the sheriff mentioned. When we are selecting candidates, we want to select a candidate by asking them and making sure that we're asking the right questions to make sure that it's a right fit for us as an office, but also a right fit for the candidate. Sometimes this leads to maybe some pain in the numbers that we have, because we do have a small ratio. When we are down 2 or 3 or 4 people, we really feel that. But my supervisors agree that they'd rather be a little bit short than hiring the wrong people at the wrong time. So we're proud of that success. One of the things I mention each year is our community engagement committee. This year, our community engagement committee participated in 67 unique events. So this is beyond town meetings, city council meetings, briefings, staffs. This is beyond what our SROs are doing in our 5 school districts. These are 65 events that they participated in, either that were going on in the communities that we became a part of or that we hosted ourselves. And I'm proud of that group of dedicated deputies who put their volunteer time in some cases into that committee. One other thing I'd like to highlight is this is our 50th year in contract with the Air Guard. We work in all aspects, as deputies, we work in all aspects of the Air Guard and the Joe Foss Field, including security, their drone program, their counter drone program, gate operations, and patrol. We're really proud of that partnership. 50 years is a long time, and I've got a great staff over there keeping it going. We do have a few retirements we anticipate for this year, and we have a few more retirements within our contracts that we anticipate within this year. So I too want to thank the staff. I have, I think, 70 staff with patrol and over the contracts. 10 of those people work as supervisors 24/7, 365 days a year, night and day. They're out there. In the storm Sunday, we had a gentleman who was drunk driving through the blizzard and struck a trooper vehicle, which then propelled into one of our vehicles. We've had a couple close calls this year with deputies getting hit by impaired drivers. That's something we continue to keep an eye on. But I like to think when I'm, managing these folks from the comfort of my living room on a Saturday night, that there's people out there doing the hard work, working with our local first responders and our dedicated folks that want to be out there and truly want to be a part of their communities and helping these communities in whatever way we can. So that's all I have. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer or elaborate.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you. It's amazing to hear that you're fully staffed right now. Do you have any currently in training? Anybody, any positions that you're looking at filling, anticipating the retirements?
Yep, absolutely. We have 2 in training right now. They're done with the academy, recently graduated, and they've joined a field training program in our office, and they're in their first phase of that. So that'll be like a May time frame. That's how long our field training our field training takes in the office. And then we just completed an eligibility list for those anticipated vacancies that we see moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Public comment on this brief, sorry, Sheriff, I'll let you have the floor.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't sound like a broken record a little bit about repeat offenders we're struggling with. There's an informal group called Safe South Dakota, and it was started by Mayor Tinnick, and we have regular calls with the mayor of Rapid City, the Attorney General's office, the police chief and sheriff from Pennington and Rapid and Sioux Falls. And we invite and sometimes have quite often the governor's office and the Department of Corrections on the calls. I just wanted to give you a little snapshot. We had 535 inmates in our jail on March 10th. 117 of those inmates were on parole. 92 of those had new charges. So they re-victimized someone else in our society while they were on parole. If you look up the definition of parole in the state statute, it says that an inmate on parole is in the custody of the Department of Corrections until the end of their parole. Yet today we have 92 of them in our jail who are in the custody of the Department of Corrections, but they re-victimize people on the outside. And that continues to happen. And we talk about recidivism and the poor recidivism rate that we have in South Dakota. And I understand the legislature didn't go with one of the programs to try to reduce recidivism. I think they're going to do another summer study, hopefully, or the recidivism task force is going to review this, but we can't expect different results if we keep doing the same thing. And we've got the prison, the road graders are out there, but in our state, in our society, we need to work on the terrible recidivism rate that we have. I glanced through the, Chief Deputy Gromer pulled up the statistics. I glanced through these 92 people that are in our custody now that re-victimize people in our society while they're in the custody of the Department of Corrections on parole. And there were charges like rape of someone under 13, first-degree murder, robbery, burglary, distribution of controlled substance, and the list goes on. In addition to the 117 inmates that are in our jail, under parole supervision, 113 are in our jail that have probation officers. So a very similar situation, only they're on probation, they have a probation officer. While they're on probation, they're committing additional crimes in our community. So almost half of our people that are Minnehaha County inmates in our jail today are under a level of supervision with parole or probation. And so if you're victimized in our community tonight, most likely the person that victimizes you is on probation or parole. That's just the statistics in our community, and we need to change that. And so that Safe South Dakota group, as we talk about this, our focus is now on these offenders that are on probation and parole. And I can tell you if Chief Hedrick from Rapid City or Sheriff Mueller were here or talking to their commission, they'd be telling them exactly the same thing, and they have. And I've seen a list of offenses that have occurred recently in Rapid City, Pennington County, very similar to what we're seeing here. Parolees committing violent crimes in their community. So this is kind of why I never get invited to talk to the Optimist Club, but this is something that our community has got to address, and it's got to address as soon as it can. With that, I'll take any questions.
Commissioner Benega.
Well, I've had the privilege of being the liaison on the Sheriff's Department many times over the years, and you guys as a group and ladies doing a fantastic job. But one of the things that I just want to bring up, and I've heard you talk about this, so I excuse myself for not asking you before. If you just touch base on what your concerns are with the vape issue that we have in the younger population, it seems like I'm hearing more and more about this, and frankly, the legislature did a crappy job of even addressing it. So if you would do it without being too political, that would be great.
Well, I chair the National Sheriff's Association Drug Enforcement Committee, which represents over 3,000 elected sheriffs in America. And the last meeting that we held, I heard time and time again from every sheriff in the room about the illicit Chinese vapes flooding their school-age kids, grade school, middle school, big time, high schools, and that it's out of control and almost impossible to regulate. I know that there's an attempt right now through Congress to try to close that door, or at least, resist the flow of those vapes coming into the U.S. But if you go drive around Sioux Falls, there's a reason vape shops have bars on their windows, because they're incredibly popular with our young, developing children. They're marketed towards children. We have no idea what's in them, whether they're a nicotine vape or whether they're just a vape that's got a picture of a cartoon on it or a video game contained in it, whatever it may be, marketed to children, highly addictive, and they're dragging this stuff into their lungs, not knowing what's even in them. And, you can pass a law and say you got to list the contents. Well, who's going to check that? I take it to the health department and turn it into them, and they're going to be able to check it. They sent some of these items that are in the vape shops to the state lab, and a year later they hadn't gotten the results even. So this is unregulated. If I could send a message to parents, it's like, if you think your kid's using these vapes, you need to get them to a doctor, you need to get them help, and you need to find out where they're getting it. And I appreciate the legislature taking some steps, baby steps I'll call them, to try to address the vape issue. I appreciate Congress trying to take steps, but right now it's flowing into our communities at an unprecedented rate, and it's dangerous to our kids.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention again.
I want to circle back to what you were talking about, the recidivism, Sheriff. When the legislators were having all the discussion about building the prison, a lot of them were against it because they said we need to work on recidivism and trying to keep people from going back. And we're obviously we got the prison through, and we're going to be building a new prison. But a lot of the same legislators, when a bill was presented during this session on recidivism and addressing the issue, the same legislators that were saying that we need to address it, now we're against that bill. And the level of hypocrisy by these people, to me, is just appalling, and I'm just calling them out now. It's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're for something if you do something else and then be against the other thing. It's amazing to me, and I hope the voters are paying attention.
Well, I was on that prison reset group, and we voted unanimously to move forward with the building of the prison, but we were very, very clear in our message, and that was that the issue of recidivism has to be addressed. There needs to be significant resources available on both sides of the state to deal with people coming out of prison, to set them up to succeed, not fail. And I think we're holding our breath, waiting to see what that will turn out to be. But it didn't happen this session.
Yep. Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, also coming back to Commissioner Karski's point, you had mentioned the number of inmates that are in the jail, and I just want to make sure I have that right. 117-ish as of earlier this month. Of the 500 plus are on parole. 92 have new charges, and in addition to that, 113 of those are on probation. Did I get that all correct?
Yep, right. And when we say 500 and some inmates, remember that we have some rental beds, we have some that are other counties, so our local inmate population from Minnehaha County is about 400. So it's about half of them that are probation or parole.
And we have, it was mentioned earlier in Warden Matson's talk that we have 15,000 meals that we serve every day to those inmates.
1,500 meals.
1,500. Okay, so half of that is a budget item that the county taxpayer dollars support, but those are inmates who, previous to being housed again, were on the state budget. Is that correct? Am I getting that right? They were parole or?
So we have to pay the bill on everybody that's a parolee in our jail, except ones that are in only on a parole hold. Now, we had 16 on March 10th, 16 in jail on parole holds. Well, the state only pays $95 a day for a parole hold on an inmate that costs us $130 a day. So we go backwards every time somebody comes into our facility on parole, but they need to be in custody. But, yeah, the state was very careful years and years and years ago to write the law that says that when a parole violator commits a new offense, victimizes somebody else in the community, the expense for housing them in the jail will be the expense of the county.
I've been harping on this. Thank you, Sheriff.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's interesting to think about the number of potential bills there were about property taxes and then the ones about release and preparing people to be members of our society again. I just also wanted to say that I don't think we can overstate the impact that your leadership has had in our department and in our community over the last numerous years. And just want to give a shout out to you and to the work that you've done and to the leadership that you've trained. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you to your staff. Any public comment on this agenda item? All right. Well, we're about halfway through. All right. Consider a motion to authorize the chair to sign an updated 2025 LEMPG contract. Jason Gearman.
Jason Gearman, Minnehaha County Emergency Management. You guys signed this contract, actually a different contract in late 2024. There were some updates as the funding had been withheld throughout the year. And when these updates came through, the state that requested that we sign this new contract. If you got questions, I can go into more detail on what it was. It's the main change. Otherwise, it's up to you to sign the contract.
All right. Public comment. Commission, questions, action.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the Sheriff's Office to purchase two 2026 Dodge Durango vehicles from Wegner Auto. Captain Bosman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe Bosman, Sheriff's Office. In front of you this morning, I have a request to purchase two vehicles off of the South Dakota State bid. These vehicles are 2026 model Dodge Durango pursuit-rated vehicles. These vehicles will be used to replace aging out vehicles for our Warrant Task Force and Investigations divisions. We are going to be utilizing appropriated 2026 funds for one of the vehicles, and the other vehicle is going to be purchased with the asset forfeiture money. If you remember, at the beginning of every year, I kind of give a recollection of where we have for that asset forfeiture money, and we have a good balance in there. So one of those vehicles, we're going to be utilizing funds towards that purchase, and the other would be the standard money that we have set aside in 2026 for the purchase of the vehicle. Being that it's off of an existing state bid, this falls in line with our county procurement procedures. They are very standard police vehicles with their equipment that will be installed into them to do the duties that we require.
Public comment on this agenda item. Do we want to buy new vehicles, Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to approve a joint agreement for combined election between Garrettson School District and Minnehaha County. Auditor Anderson.
Good morning, Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. So this agreement is very similar to the one that I presented to you for City of Sioux Falls on March 3rd. This one is with Minnehaha County and Garrettson School District. And the agreement is there. So pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 91337, the governing body of a school district shall in even-numbered years hold the general school board election in conjunction with the June primary or the November general election. The Garrettson School District has decided to hold its general school board election in conjunction with our June primary election. And the school district and Minnehaha County would like to have the election combined. Therefore, we have worked with legal counsel to present you this joint agreement. And I just ask for your approval. Any questions you may have, I can answer.
Public comment on this agenda item. Commission, questions for the auditor?
I have one quick question, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Leah. Are we expecting to see mutual agreements with, say, Del Rapids, Hartford, Humboldt, some of those other communities, or we kind of finishing things out here with Garrettson?
No, you'll be seeing more agreements come to you. There's a slight delay so I had been working directly with Eric Bogue in State's Attorney's Office. Maggie went ahead and approved this one for me, but I'm kind of waiting for him to return to go through some more of these agreements. We're getting them in pretty regularly. So I have a total of 6 that plan to combine with us for the June 2nd election. Those are school districts and municipalities. I have a list of them here if you want that, but we still have a few more to come.
Gotcha. I assumed as much. Thank you.
All right,
Make a motion to approve?
thank you.
Second?
Call the roll.
Kipley,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the Highway Department to purchase a 2026 Toyota forklift under the Sourcewell procurement contract in the amount of $39,103.80 and authorize chair to sign the purchase agreement.
Good morning,
Jenna.
Commissioners. Jenna Gerard, Assistant Highway Superintendent. We are just looking for authorization to purchase a 2026 Toyota forklift. This is to replace a old forklift we had surplus a few years ago. We thought we could get away with just using a skid loader to do the same work, and we've determined that it is not as safe as the forklift. So we are looking to purchase this forklift. It was in our 2026 budget, and we are going to keep this new forklift at our main highway shop and take one of our older ones up to Colton where we don't have one currently.
Public comment. You say you're going to take it up to Colton. Any special training needed to drive the forklift? Are the people that are up there authorized to use a forklift?
Yep, so we have one employee currently that is working out of the Colton shop, and he is trained to operate it. All of our
Okay, thank you.
people are trained.
Any other questions? Action.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Benega,
Aye.
Kipley,
Aye.
Blindberg,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the chair to sign an updated joint powers agreement between Minnehaha County, the South Dakota Department of Transportation, and Lake County for the reconstruction of County Highway 149 at the Lake County border. Jenna.
Jenna Gerard again, Assistant Highway Superintendent at the Highway Department. This one may look a little familiar to you guys. I think you've seen it a couple times already. We just have another update to it with some language that was changed. The language just clarifies that The needs in Minnehaha County will remain Minnehaha County's responsibility, as long with the needs in Lake County will remain Lake County's responsibility. Everything else that was previously approved has stayed the same.
Public comment. Commission.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Lineberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Item 19 is a legislative update. I'm going to ask for a motion to table that to our next meeting. There's too much information and a little conflict schedule here, so I'm just going to ask for a motion to table that to our next meeting.
Second.
Motion is second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is tabled. Now we are at the opportunity for public comment. Moving on to commission liaison reports.
I'll table mine until the next,
Okay.
also.
Non-action commission discussion. We do have an executive session immediately following the commission meeting for the purposes of South Dakota Codified Law 125-2, 134, and 6. So I look for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are going to go into executive session next door.